Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tiki Goth Club. Today I'm in Everett, Washington. I'm with my friends Iris and it's not Matthias. Is it Matthias or Matthias?
Matthias.
Matthias, and they are from Germany.
Correct.
Yes.
And you're from. Can you name the cities that you were from?
Well, I was born and raised in an area called, the town was called Neuss. It's close to Düsseldorf and Cologne.
Yes, I'm glad you said it, not me. And where were you from?
I was born and raised in and near Berlin.
Yeah.
So it was the East German part before the war breakdown, and afterwards just Berlin.
And the interesting thing about their story is that they're from Germany. At first they were into industrial, which then turned into rockabilly, which then turned into tiki. So we're gonna get their story.
It's natural.
You lived in East Berlin.
Correct.
And the Berlin Wall was definitely in effect, up,
right.
full on,
Yeah.
and it didn't come down until '89.
Correct.
Right.
And for me, it was when I was walking around in Berlin with my parents or so.
Yeah.
It was there, and for me, it was always the border. And even as a child, I was curious what is behind the Iron Curtain, what it was called. In '89, it was a big deal. At this point in '89, I didn't realize it, but by remembering and talking with my parents, I realized that it was a very scary situation for my parents because their whole world from one day to another broke down.
Yeah.
They lived in, and they didn't know what's coming next. How will it be? How is it in the new Germany, so to say?
And the new Germany is when the wall came down.
Correct.
So what you're saying is that, I mean, ultimately, in theory, that's good news.
Correct.
But what you're saying is, like, for a lot of people that were in East Berlin, they're kind of like, oh, okay, now what does that mean for us?
Correct. That was that mixed feeling. The excitement about, the whole world is open now for us. Before we were basically trapped in this country. But on the other hand, it was overwhelming what to do with this freedom. You know, what happens to my job?
Yeah.
What happens to my family? Is it all staying like it is, or how big will the change for me personally be? I think that was the main things everybody drove at this time. These 50% anxiety for the future, because it was such an unknown thing, the future, in the free world, so to say.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it was the total excitement about that it is that way right now.
So living in East Berlin, did you have access to music? Like,
yeah, that's
like you weren't cut off from that.
That's the point I was coming through, because due to the fact that in the city of Berlin, American, British, and French people, and also West Berlin, so West German people, were able to go back and forth in the whole city. Music was available. It was a black market for East German people before the war breakdown. It was you had to pay a whole lot of money for Western music, like American music.
Okay.
So, and in my group of friends, there was a guy who I sadly lost contact to over the years, but his older brother was totally into music, especially synthie pop and industrial music. So that's how I came to that kind of music in an age of 11 and 12 years, because my best buddy at this point was listening to the music his older brother was listening to, and
so you're 11. You're that young, and you're able to like listen to that kind of music.
So
so was like industrial like your first love as far as music is concerned?
Yeah, I would say it was not industrial music at all. The first love was more Depeche Mode and synthie pop stuff.
So synth pop, okay.
And in the 90s, after the war broke down, I always refer to the 90s. It's just my perspective and my personal opinion, to the best time in the last 100 years, because after the war broke down, the Cold War was ended, and the world didn't have that much. There was the Yugoslavian War, of course, and the first Iraqi War, but in Germany, everything was fine. The country was reunited. Everybody was kind of happy with the situation and
looking towards the future.
Right, looking forward, and that's why, especially the techno and house music were so big, because it was just fun and happiness.
Iris, like what was the first music like you were into back then?
It was a wild mix between like synthie pop, Depeche Mode, but also like all the European, what you nowadays call industrial music, like Fraunhofer to The Clinic was a big influence in my musical life so far. And I think I have to explain that, especially in Germany, the whole goth scene or the whole synthie pop industrial scene, they're all together in one spot. So if you go to a club, you will listen to Depeche Mode, but the next song is going to be Fraunhofer 2, and the next song is going to be KMFDM, and the next song is going to be The Clinic. So it's a wild mix of not only synthie pop but also industrial music, and all these different,
also classic goth stuff like Suxi and the Banshees.
The Sisters were a big influence in my youth, but they would all be played in the same club, and we would all listen to all that music in a row, like after one song after the other. So
that's exactly how it was. Like I remember when I was going out.
Yeah,
it wasn't like just industrial or just goth music or just synth pop. It was everything.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was all the same under the old big term of goth music, because everything was played in the same club. So that's what we listened to.
Right, and the interesting fact in the 90s was for discovering the music, because like I said, I was more like depending on the big brother of my buddy, what kind of music he brought home and we could listen to. And then in the mid or later 90s, when I started going to clubs, it was enlightening, because you just know a handful of bands and music. Yeah. And then in the club, there was more and more.
Oh my God. Well, it's exactly the same for me. I mean, like, a lot of the music that I got into, I mean, like, I lived in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. I mean, literally in the middle of nowhere. And it's amazing that I got into anything cool at all. Mm-hmm. But what it came down for me is I'd have that one friend here or that one friend there that turned me on to music. Like one guy single-handedly turned me on to industrial. Mm-hmm. And whatever the bands he liked is, well, okay, I like that too. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until going to a dance club, I was like, what's this song?
Right.
Oh, that's, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I think it's funny, even though you were in Germany and even though I was in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, our paths are kind of the same, where like, it was kind of like, went like this and exploded.
Right.
So you may be asking yourself, how can I join the Tiki Goth Club? Well, there is no membership. There are no fees. But I have shirts for sale. They're $20 a piece, $5 shipping and handling. If you're interested, go to my website, tikiwithray.com. There's a prompt that says buy a shirt, follow that, and then that's how you can get your own.
I think it's the biggest Gothic industrial festival in the world, which takes place in Leipzig, which is a city in southeast Germany, in Saxonia.
And a Gothic convention.
Right.
Like a festival.
It's called the WGT, the Wave-Gotik Convention Festival.
Right.
Meet.
And yeah, and this festival at its peak, I think they had 120,000 visitors, and they're also responsible for some reunions. Like I saw 66 Sputnik, for example, playing there. Yeah.
Yes.
That's wow. I haven't heard that band name in a long time.
Yeah. Anyway, in 2005, we participate this festival convention. Yeah, independently from each other. I was flown in from Hamburg. She came from Düsseldorf, and we had a good time. And we met in one of the clubs there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you met at the festival,
right?
Yes.
And
no way.
Yeah, over the 3 days the festival took along, I followed her kind of, and we tried to be, or I tried to be in the same locations like she, and because I asked her the first night which bands you are going to see, and
you're like taking notes.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, we were pretty much the only two blonde people in this whole festival.
Two blonde people?
Because everybody was like black-haired and gothic, and we were pretty much the only blonde people.
Yeah.
You're easy to stand up.
Yeah.
Now, where is Iris?
Yeah.
So, there she is.
There is a blonde person. That has to be Mathias. So.
Yeah, and
but then she messed you up. She wears a hat, and you're like, can't find her.
No, anyway, this is pretty much how we met.
And then you got into rockabilly.
That's interesting because...
How do you go from being into industrial into being into rockabilly?
Well, in Germany, we say, a lot of people in Germany say, if you get too old for industrial, you become a rockabilly. So, I don't know. I mean...
There's a certain truth to that. I mean, even here.
The thing is, in Germany, I don't know how it is here because we never had the chance so far to visit Gothic or industrial clubs here.
Yeah.
But in Germany, especially the psychobilly scene and the industrial scene were somehow connected. So I never got in touch with psycho or rockabillys. I always respected them and they were there. And this guy with the flat and he's a psychobilly. But they kind of liked industrial music as well. So in the region Iris lived...
Right, everybody goes to the same clubs,
Yeah, no right. That was more mixed in this region than in Berlin or Hamburg. So she was into the rockabilly style.
What did you like about it, Iris?
About the style, you mean?
Yeah, about rockabilly and just the whole thing.
Well, it's great music. I mean, you cannot deny that this is good music, and the style is beautiful, and it's just something that's easy to get into.
I think what it is that, like, when you think, you talk about goth, right? Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that's part of goth is horror, dark imagery, and stuff like that. And I think probably if you go from industrial into psychobilly, the big part of that whole psychobilly thing was the horror, darkness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
And then you got the Cramps.
Yes, you got the Cramps, you got Message Shops, you got a lot of bands that kind of, create the bridge between the different styles. And you never question it because you still like the music and you don't put a label on it. You just listen to the music and think, oh, that's great too.
In the mid-2000s, it was still the songs that were played in the clubs. So we got bored and annoyed by it. And these friends we made in the clubs who were also into rockabilly, psychobilly, of course invited us, hey, let's go to this show or let's go to this club or to this festival, which was rockabilly.
Yeah, and they just offered a different world, a distraction, of the same songs that we are listening to. And
you made me realize something. And I just thought of this as you're talking about it. And maybe it's true for you too. As I'm thinking about the different types of music that I've been into over my life, I have a window of time where I get into a particular type of music.
Right.
And then I get into that music, and then I get into all the bands that I'm going to get into. And then eventually I kind of get out of that type of music and get into something new. And then I'm into this type of music for a couple years. I don't discount the old stuff that I listen to.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is that when I kind of move on to the next genre of music I would get into, I'm kind of done with exploring or getting into any newer bands. Like, what I'm getting at is, like, I'm thinking about industrial music. Like, I got into industrial, like, in the late 80s, early 90s. We're literally talking, like, say, like, 87, 88 to, like, 92. Mm-hmm. And then after that, like, I moved on to garage rock. Mm-hmm. Like, rock and roll kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got into that, even if there was an amazing industrial band that would have came out, I wouldn't have cared. Like, I remember, like, you know, KMFDM would put out a new album. I didn't care anymore. Like, I was, in the 80s, in the mid-80s, I was into all the hard rock stuff and stuff like that. And I was into thrash metal and speed metal and stuff like that. But I was into what I was into, and then when I got out of that, I wasn't really open to, like, getting into, like, newer music. It's kind of like, this is what it is, this is what it is. So, like, you're talking about industrial. Maybe is it the same for you guys, where it's like, you can only really be into this for so long, and you kind of have to move on to something different.
It was never a conscious thought, but
it's not conscious.
That's pretty much how it happened. Yes.
So how did you guys get into Tiki? Was it from the Rockabilly scene?
Yeah, correct. The friends who basically brought us or tiered us into the Rockabilly scene, which at this point are still very nice people. They when we met them the first time at their home, they already had tikis set up, and I looked at the tiki. You remember the big tiki they had underneath their window?
Yes.
And I thought, hey man, that's cool shit.
Yeah.
Without realizing that it's his own, that Tiki has his own history. At this point, for me, Tiki was just related to the 50s rockabilly thing, you know?
Yeah, but then you have bands like the Message Shops, you know, that kind of, you know, draw the line between the different genres.
I'll tell you what, the more I think about Message Shops, the more I'm starting to think that, like, they are very important, because they're a band that's very, very similar to the Cramps for me.
Yes.
Because they're world building. They are creating, like, this is what they're singing about. And it's horror, punk, tiki, everything. Essentially the same exact thing that the Cramps did.
Yeah.
Here's all these different worlds and all these different interests, and it's sort of like, here you go. Yep. You know.
Yeah, and everything that's spooky, I mean, from goth culture, everything spooky is easy to translate to any other culture, as long as it's spooky, kind of.
Yeah, that's related to tikis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, well, to me, a tiki bar is supposed to be dark and mysterious.
Yeah.
Right. The first real connection or touching point was when friends of us, it was these two friends we met in Goth Club, and then at a German Rockabilly festival we met a hilarious guy, his name is Carsten, who was into Tiki at this point totally, and he asked us to go to the Viva Las Vegas festival in Las Vegas. And the first year we went there, we also married in Vegas.
You got married in Vegas?
Yeah,
Yes.
Classic.
At Viva?
Yes.
No, not directly at the festival,
yeah, but while it was going on.
Right.
Yeah, we had an Elvis impersonator.
Did you really?
Yes, of course.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And at this time we went the first time, they took us to Frankie's Tiki Room.
Oh, yes.
And that was my first visit to a real tiki bar.
Yeah, it was kind of eye-opening.
Yeah.
You know?
It
Or
was
closing
cool.
because we
Well,
went there.
you have to really open up your eyes. Why? Because it's dark as hell in there. If you walk in, you're like...
Because, you know, Vegas desert...
Where are you, Iris? When you're doing this thing where you kind of put your hand on their shoulder and you're like...
Because, you know, you walk in there and you see the outside wall, which is, you know, all white, and it's a desert Vegas sun, and you go in there and all of a sudden everything is super dark, and you run into a, like, fugu fish, and, you know...
Yeah, I thought Frank's Tiki Room was closed, and we running into a closed bar which has no lights on, so...
What's going on?
You walk in and you're just waiting for the voice to be like, we're not open yet.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Now all of a sudden, like, no, Iris, I'm hearing other voices.
I think I see a shadow over there. I think people are in here.
Yeah, that's what it was. Then it was like fading backwards, you know. The bar came up and it's somebody is here, and the funny thing was that when you watched the door, that everybody who came in has the same problem. Everybody was...
What's going on?
I never before that put so much effort in listening to rockabilly or surf music, you know. And in Frankie's Tiki Room, our buddy Carsten went to the music machine and put on the Trashman.
The music box.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I realized, hey, surf music is really cool. And from this point on, I started digging into and listening to surf music, and that was the tripping point, kind of.
And we realized it's
came
pretty
to
much
our
the
life.
same, you know, when you drop out of goth music and drop out of industrial music, you kind of find yourself in surf music and surf punk, if you want to. I mean, it's all connected. So for us, it was, you know, the tipping point when we realized, okay, there's a different world we can explore now. And we enjoyed that. So.
And you see that nowadays, the last time, I think it's 2 years back, this year, there wasn't Viva Las Vegas due to all the shit that's going on. The year before, we went with a friend, and what I realized is that the borders are fading away, because even at the biggest rockabilly festival in the world, in Las Vegas, you see more and more girls that dressing in latex stuff, which is styled like the old rockabilly style, which for me in former times more belonged to the industrial gothic scene.
Fetish, industrial gothic was the same
But
pretty much
it's,
back in the days.
I think the borders are coming down, so it's
well, that's the reason why I wanted to start this series, Tiki Goth Club, because I'm finding out and realizing that there's a lot of people that are into Tiki. They're also into goth. And those worlds aren't really far away. You realize that even your story that you told me, it wasn't just you two that were like into industrial and then you got into rockabilly. You're talking about a bunch of people over in Germany that followed the same path. And it was the same thing with Tiki too, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a dark mystery you're attracted to, and I think it's kind of human nature that you're into that. And
but the thing that I love the most about your story is that I love getting your story, because as I'm listening to you guys talk about how you got into everything and how you progressed into the different things, it just reminds me of myself. It's like, there's like me and I have tons of other friends that kind of went the same way. And what I love about what's so cool about all this is like, it's the music. It's all these different things that you're on the other side of the world than we are. But we all...
Right.
You know what it means? It means that we all have good taste.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is that bands like The Cramps and Deadbolt, for example, or Messerchaps, opened my mind, because before in the 90s to the late 90s, I was really serious about the music that I listened to, and everything that wasn't serious was not good music for me until I just.
So what you're saying is you didn't like Weird Al Yankovic. Iris is like, hey, did you hear the new Weird Al Yankovic song? Oh, I don't like that. That's not serious music.
Oh God, no.
Iris, I only listen to serious music. Yeah, like the Cramps are serious.
Yeah, but
can your pussy do the dog? You know, this is what we got to do. When we should go to Vegas, right? We should go to Tiki. We'll sit at the bar, right? We'll just sit there.
Yeah,
and we'll just wait for people to come in.
Right.
And we can take turns. Like Iris can go like, yeah, we're not open yet.
Just follow my voice. I'm over here.
And
just come in this direction, please.
Just like mess with people. Like, no, we're not open. And, oh, I'm sorry. And then be like, oh no, we're just kidding. You guys have cake like this over in Germany?
Yes, we do, but I haven't tasted it for like over a year now, so I wouldn't know how it is.
Is there Popeye's chicken over in Germany?